Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of this Introduction to ArchivesSpace Online Workshop. Today's concepts build on what we covered yesterday, which was a jam-packed day of information, so we appreciate all of you hanging in there and coming back. In advance of the training, you received an email with an agenda for the workshop with links to all of the materials you will need to participate in this workshop. These materials include the pre-workshop survey and Zoom link to get into the workshop, as well as a test instance of ArchivesSpace for your use with instructions on how to access the test instance of ArchivesSpace. The training workbook for your use is also included. You can download and use that after the workshop as well. There's also a Zoom cheat sheet to help troubleshoot any issues you may have with Zoom, a getting started document outlining additional ArchivesSpace resources you may want to take advantage of after this training. Based on our one-day in-person introduction to ArchivesSpace training, this online training will cover the core concepts and functions of ArchivesSpace. Please remember that this is our first attempt at offering a workshop in an online environment, and like you, the trainers are working remotely and under very different circumstances than normal right now. So please understand if elements of the workshop do not go according to plan. This online training will not cover any advanced concepts or explore any plugins or other community-generated enhancements of ArchivesSpace. Unlike our in-person workshops, this online training will not include any live practice exercises, but a shared instance of ArchivesSpace has been provided for your use. We will try to address all attendee questions related to ArchivesSpace, but due to the nature of the workshop, we will not be able to troubleshoot anyone's individual implementation of ArchivesSpace. You will notice that your microphone and camera were muted when you entered the room. We ask that you keep your microphone and camera muted for the duration of the training. If you would like to ask a question, please type the question into the chat. Questions typed into the chat will be read and answered during allocated time for Q&A. Some questions may be answered directly in the chat in an effort to keep the training on schedule, so keep an eye on the chat for additional information and resources. Please post your questions in the chat to everyone so that we can all learn and respond. If you need technical assistance during this workshop, please email us at archivespacehome@lyrasis.org. I will drop that into the chat. We're using the latest version of ArchivesSpace for this training, which is version 2.7.1. If you are currently using an earlier version of ArchivesSpace, keep in mind some of the features you see today may not be available. Your instructors for this training are Nancy Enneking of the Getty Center and Brittany Newberry of the Atlanta University Center. Nancy led the training yesterday and Brittany will be leading today. Both trainers and myself will be in attendance both days and are on hand to answer questions and assist as necessary. Before we begin, let me remind you of the bios of our two esteemed trainers. Nancy Enneking is currently the head of institutional records and archives at the Getty Research Institute. She has responsibility for all records management and institutional archives functions for the Getty's 4 operating programs, the Conservation Institute, Foundation, Museum, and Research Institute, and for the overarching trust administration. She has been active on the California Historical Records Advisory Board as a member of the ArchivesSpace User Advisory Council, and since 2014 served as an ArchivesSpace trainer. Prior to her arrival at Getty in 2004, she spent almost 6 years with the Texas State Archives and worked in several university archives. Brittany Newberry is a processing archivist at the Atlanta University Center. At the AUC, she trains staff, interns, and volunteers on using ArchivesSpace and creates and updates ArchivesSpace manuals. She is an active member of the Society of American Archivists as a member of the Archivists and Archives of Color section and membership committee. She also serves as the Assistant Communications Director for the Society of Georgia Archivists. Brittany is currently the Vice Chair for the ArchivesSpace User Advisory Council and lead for the testing sub-team. So with that, I'll turn things over to Brittany to kick us off for day 2.
Hi, everyone. Please let me know if you can't hear me at all during this training. That would be bad, and I don't want people missing anything. So I'm going to start today with digital objects. Then after the break, we will move to authority records such as agents and subjects. We'll talk about importing and exporting data and finish up with data cleanup. So with digital objects, I want to begin by saying that ArchivesSpace is not a digital content management system and does not have the capability to be such. So that is important to know. ArchivesSpace enables the description of digital objects, such as your digitized archival resources or your born digital materials. So it acts as a digital object in ArchivesSpace. It's usually comprised of 3 items: your metadata record, which is usually the descriptive information, your rights information, or your technical details. It also includes your content files, which are the digital files, such as your still images, PDFs, text documents, such moving images, sound recording, and then it's the link or digital wrapper for that digital object. So they're usually the file URI. I want to first discuss what digital objects are at the AUC. So at the AUC, we use digital objects as a way to link our digital materials that are in our Island Door instance to our where they are located in our finding aids. So it's a way to form a representation so people can see our finding aids on the public side and see that this item has a digital link and object, and you can get to it from the our website. So it's not a way to keep that digital material. It's not a way to store it. It's just a way to form a link. So I want to first show you what digital object looks like in ArchivesSpace. So to get to digital objects, you can either go to the finding aid that has that digital object, or you can go to browse and click on digital objects. We will view this first one, the watercolor. So these are the fields that appear when you view this record. So on the side, you have the left-hand navigation bar that shows you which fields have information entered into them. You can see that it has the title, identifier, the object type, file versions, languages, dates, extents, record links. This is the record in the finding aid that it links to, subjects, notes, and various other information. At the top, you will see various buttons, the button to edit, to add an event, to publish this, to export it, to merge it with other records, to transfer it, and to create an assessment. If you have the permissions, you will also probably see suppress and delete. Those are only granted at certain permission levels. You can suppress it or delete this record. You will see that this is just one single level here, and that is known as a simple object. So a simple object is one in which there is only one digital content file. So it's just one still image, or it's multiple pages, but they're only in one file, like a PDF that may have 10 pages, but it's represented by one text document file. And these are single level in structure, and they usually just comprise of the metadata record and the content file. So all this information. You do have the ability to make this a complex digital object by clicking on edit and then adding child. But I'm going to go ahead and browse and show you a complex object and what that means. So we're going to go back to digital objects from our browse menu. I'm going to filter the text by searching over here, and this will just search in this results. We're going to look at this first one that appears, the letter and photographs of the Walker River. And you will see at the top here that there is a hierarchical interface, and that there are multiple levels to this object. And if you expand, you will see that there are children and siblings underneath them, and this is what's known as a complex digital object. So with complex, it's usually distributed over 2 or more content files. So you can have a digitized image and there are multiple of the same image. Or you can have a text document that you scanned every page as an image, but they're not in one file, they're in multiple files, and you can use the complex object in order to represent all levels of that item. So it's usually multi-level in structure, and then you have the parent level metadata record, which usually represents the description for the entire item. And then you have your component records for the individual content files. You can add metadata to those component records similar to the parent record, but as you can see here, they don't have to have all that information. They may just have the title and file version. Interesting. Okay, don't know why I'm getting an error. Okay, well, we will move on. So there are multiple use cases for using digital objects in ArchivesSpace. I will direct you to page 75 of the workbook to discuss those use cases. A lot of them are similar to how we at the AUC use them. It explains 2 of them in the workbook. So you have your own external digital content management system, and you use ArchivesSpace as a way to like describe those items and link them to that digital content management system. So that's one of the basic ways to use it. So now I wanted to show you how to create a simple digital object. So you can create a digital object either through the create menu and digital object, or you can browse to the finding aid. I want to show you how to create a single object through the finding aid that it will be in. Okay, I've created this finding aid for this purpose. So digital objects can basically be linked at any level of your finding aid to various types of records, to accessions, resources, so you can, and to their component archival objects. So you could link it through the instances on your top level, through the series level, through the file level, any other level. We're going to start by linking at the file level for this photograph. And we're going to scroll to instances, and you can see in instances you have the ability to add container instance or add digital object. So we're going to add a digital object. So when you add a digital object, you can type ahead, browse, or create. So we're going to create one from here. So when you do that, this screen appears. The screen is basically similar to how the digital object module works, but you don't have the ability to create component records, just a single level object. I want to show that for digital objects, you are only required to have a title and identifier. All other fields are optional, but if you do add them, they have their own requirements, and we will go through that. So to add digital objects, usually how we do it is we always have a spreadsheet with that information. So you'll see on the screen the spreadsheet of the digital objects that I need to add into ArchivesSpace. You'll see here the ones that I want to add. The one that I want to add first for Josephine Dibble Murphy. It has basically all the information I will need, like the collection it's in, to link it, the date, file URI, if it has restrictions, the type, the language. We will go over all those fields and more when I link it. And I also want to show you what it looks like online. So this is the image that I plan to link to my favorite finding aid with all the details and various information that we provide for it. You can copy and paste from website. I find that having a spreadsheet or a separate document with all the information helps me do multiple at once without having to go to the website every time. So we'll scroll back here. So we'll start with adding this information. So name, the identifier. The identifier can be anything you want it to be. So it can even be the URI for the file, but it will not be an actionable URI. You won't be able to click on it. It can be a handle, an arc, basically anything, but it has to be unique for each digital object. So we use the file names that we give our digital objects. So those identifiers are created with the creation of the digital materials, and they stay with them throughout their life cycle. So I'm going to just copy that from the spreadsheet. And it can be as long as it needs to be. There's a publish button. I want to just let everyone know that you can publish your finding aid, but it will not publish your digital objects. They have to be published separately from the finding aid. So if you want to publish it now, you can click it now, but if not, you have to navigate back to that digital object and publish it. There are ways to do it in the back end, but that's too advanced for us today. We're focusing on the basics. So I'm gonna go ahead and click that publish button so I don't have to come back to it. But if you want to review, edit before publishing, I would suggest doing such. And each field has different things to publish. So the VRA core level, that is basically a non-configurable controlled value list. So it's basically you choose if it's a collection, a work, or an image. And it's not required, but you can choose it. I'm going to choose image because this is an image. And then your digital object type is a controlled value list that you can configure in your controlled value list. It's basically a generic term, and it corresponds to a mod's export value. So you choose from this list. We're going to choose still image, but there's two still images here, so we can choose either or, but it depends on, usually there's not more than one, but it depends on what you've added to your controlled values list. You click the checkbox if there's restriction to this, such as people can't see it for a certain time. In that case, you wouldn't publish it, but depends on your institution. So now we'll discuss the file version. So the file version is that content file with its link or digital wrapper to get to it. So you'll click add file version. You can add multiple file versions to a digital object. The only requirement here is the file URI. And that is its identifier. It's the resolvable link to get to that item. So the link for this image is that URI, which I have in the spreadsheet. We'll paste that here. You'll have to choose to publish this or not, separate from publishing the basic information. So we'll click publish here. The use statement is a configurable controlled value list that basically tells you what what this digital object is for, like what's the uses for. Is it an application? Is it an image master? Is it an image thumbnail? So you have, it's all good, or you have various things that you can choose from. We generally leave this blank, but it can't. I'm going to choose image thumbnail for now because I want it to appear as a thumbnail. Then the X-link actuate attribute. So that basically is a list that you use during export to indicate how the digital object should display in the context of your EAD, your XML, your mods export. So it's used in conjunction with the next field, which is the X-link show attribute. So we generally choose on request. From X-link show attribute, you can choose to embed it, show the link as new, none, other, or replace. So we're going to choose new. And then file format name. So you're going to choose the name of the format for this file. So we're going to say that it's a JPEG, but you have the option to choose audio, compressed, graphic, so a GIF, a plain text, so your PDFs, the portable document format. So you have an option to choose what this file is. So I know that this is a JPEG, and I will choose that from here. So the file format version is an open text field. So you enter the version of the format for that file type. We're going to leave that as blank. It's not necessary in order to publish this. Neither is file size, but you will add the file size here if you deem that necessary for your digital object. The checksum is basically, as some of you may know, it's an open text field and it's a digital signature for monitoring the integrity and authenticity of a digital file. So it's what you use to make sure that digital file is not corrupted, is basically the same throughout time. And then if you add a checksum, you can choose a checksum method that you use. This list is configurable. So if you use something that's not on this list, you can add that to it. That's usually an admin would add that. And that way you can choose it from there. And then the caption field. It's just basically a caption for the image. It's open text and you can add what you want people to see as a caption for this. So after the file version, you are given multiple other sub-records that you can add. You can add a language. So as I shown you in the spreadsheet, there's a way to add language for something that doesn't have a language. I highly recommend just leaving the field blank if there's no language, such as with images. But if you need to add a language, you can choose no linguistic content by typing ahead or browsing for it. You can add a script, but if it has no linguistic content, you don't need to add a script. Or you can add that it's in English if it's a text document, various other things. You can add the date for it. So I know from this that the date is circa 1950. And you type that in the expression. So if you type an expression, it's required that you choose a type, you have a label. So we're going to say that it's inclusive. You don't have to put a begin and end date. You can if you want to. There's other fields such as certainty, era, and calendar. You can add the extent for this. And if you do that, it's the number and type is required, similar to resource records. There's no extent for this, so we won't add that. But if it's like a born digital material, you can add the extent, such as the file, number of files for this digital object. You can add an agent link. You can add subjects. So you can type ahead or search for those. And we'll go over subjects and agents later on. You can add notes. And there's various note types similar to resources and other records that you can add to them. External documents, write statements. We do add a write statement, and from write statements, you can choose various others such as copyright, license, statute, and other. Ours is institutional based, so we usually choose other and add it in there, but you don't have to. And then there's collection management and user defined. So once you have filled out all the fields you deem necessary, you can click create and link to digital object. From there, you'll see that it is now similar to how container instances in this digital object. You can click on it and view it. So it's now connected to the record. When you view it, you can scroll down and see all the fields associated with it. You'll see that it's not saying that it's linked already. It may take a minute, and you should also save this archival object to make sure that instance is there. So once you've saved it, you will see that this file has a digital object and that you have created it and it's there. So we will move on to creating complex digital objects. And I want to show you how to create complex digital objects in the digital object module. So we'll go to create and then digital object.
Brittany?
Yes.
Before we do that, could we maybe just tackle a couple of questions?
Yes.
Thank you. One question we have gotten is, would you be willing to share the spreadsheet of the material that you require at the AUC?
Yeah, so ours is a little slightly different from the one I have shown here because we have our write statement in it as well.
We don't want to see that.
Yeah. So I can create one similar to this and with all the fields that we use and share that. I'll email it to you, Jessica, to share out.
And I'll put it in the drive with all the other resources.
Yeah, and we, so for our spreadsheets, they're first created by our digital services department, who creates them when ingesting them into our Islandora. And from there, they add the links necessary to add them to make them digital objects. And then I edit them to make them ArchivesSpace appropriate. So I hide fields that we don't need. So they come in handy. There is a way to import using the Harvard import tool. We just don't use that currently.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and then we had one other question in the chat that Nancy did answer, but just for the recording, is the file format name list configurable?
File format name list? No, I do not think so.
It is.
Oh, yes, yes. It's there's several non-configurable and configurable, but that one is, yeah.
That one is configurable. Okay, I think that actually catches us up, but I wanted to address those things before we got into complex digital objects.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as I was saying, so you get to creating digital objects through create and then digital object. So in my spreadsheet, you will see that I have 3 records here that have the same name, but different identifiers. This is a complex object for us at the AUC. So, and I can show you what it looks like online. So this is a map. And this is the parent record in our digital materials. And these are the 2 files for that record. So if you click on them, you'll see the individual records. But you can also see the other one connected to it. So we treat this as a complex object because it's 2 separate files, but they go together. They're 2 content files. So at the AUC, we start with this first record. We don't generally put a file URI for it, but in this case, since the file is different from the other ones and you have a different website that you can go to for it, we're going to include that. So we'll start by copying this first name. And again, the only things required here are the title and identifier. I'm going to copy the identifier for this first one, which you can see is different from the other ones. This is the base identifier, and then there's ones that represent each file associated with it. You can choose to publish it or not publish it. I'm going to publish it because I want you guys to see what this looks like on the public side. So from here, I'm going to show you a published digital object. You can choose the VRA core level, like we said. This is going to be a collection or work. I'm not going to choose it here because this is a map and it is an image, it is a JPEG, but I'm not going to choose that since it's not necessary. For digital object type, it's cartographic since it's a map. We're going to add the file version for this first one. I'm going to choose publish. For use statement, we're not going to choose anything for that, but I'm going to say that for the X link, we're going to do on request and new. Those are the 2 that we choose most often at the AUC. File format name, this is a JPEG, so we'll say that's a JPEG. We're not going to put a file format version or a file size, the checksum, or the caption. Since we generally add language, and since this is more or less a text, has text involved with it, if you click on it, you can see that there's text on it. It may take a second to load. I don't know why it's taking a second to load, but you can see that as you zoom in, there's text on it. I have to zoom in too far. So we're going to choose a language for this, and we're going to choose English, which we have in our spreadsheet. You can type ahead for that and choose the correct one. We're not going to do script for this. It's not required, but you can add script if you deem it necessary. So we can add that it's in Latin. We're going to add the date. which is for all of them 1967. Just gonna do inclusive. We're not gonna add extent, agents, subjects, notes, write statements. I will show you how we create write statements at the AUC. So we choose other, we change it to policy here. Our start date is whatever date we're creating this record on. And then we add a note. We just call the note additional information, but as you can see, there's different ways to do this. And then we add content to that note. I'm gonna remove that. You can choose copyright and add different information for that, as well as a note for that. You can choose statute or other license. So there's different write statements. If you are required to add them, you can choose which one works for your institution. So we're gonna save this digital object. This is the parent record. This parent record will be for us what has all the metadata information that we required. So the dates and the language, write statements if we added it. And we're gonna add a child. So after I add this first child, I'm gonna then show you how to do rapid data entry. We're gonna pretend like we have multiple more to add. So if you have like 10, you can try doing that. So for digital object component, the only required thing is either a title, label, or date. One of those three. You're not required to have all three. You're not required an identifier. We generally add a label and a title. I'm just gonna add a label. If you want to add a title, date, and label, you can. We're gonna add the identifier from the spreadsheet. Because it is different from the identifier for the parent record. We're gonna say publish, and we're gonna just add a file version. You are able to add all other fields similar to the parent record, but it's not necessary for component records. And add that from here. We're gonna choose our X-link attributes. You can choose the other ones if you want, but it's not required. And we're not going to enter any other fields for this. So you can either just save it or do +1 to add another component record similar to this one. We're just going to save it. Okay. So you see that we now have our first item in this component record. We've started our hierarchy. So say you want to add more children to the parent record. You can click on the parent record and then click rapid data entry. And this will appear similar to the one for resource records. You can choose which columns are visible. We're gonna choose all but basically. We're gonna basically take out most of them and just keep file version, the title, and the label. We're gonna keep these, the only ones we need from it. You don't need notes. It takes a minute, as you guys saw yesterday, to show you. And then you'll see all that we have. For some reason it's not letting me get rid of that notes content, but it's not required, so we shouldn't have to enter it to validate this. We are going to keep some things blue that will keep it the same throughout. Okay, so we'll start with this first one with the label. We're going to say item 2 for that next item. We're going to copy our identifier. We're going to say publish. We're going to add the file URL from our spreadsheet. Publish. We're going to choose our X-link attributes on request and new. We're going to ignore that notes at the end, and then we're going to add some rows. So let's add 2, just to be on the safe side. So we've added 2 rows. You see that the red for the arrows, which we will fix. We're basically going to copy this, paste it, and change the numbers. And for these, we're not going to do the X-link because we don't actually technically have them. I just wanted to show you how to use rapid data entry. Okay, and with that, we have created our additional component records. We're going to save it, press validate, and then save it. And it has created all those children for us. So say you didn't check publish for all these. If you wanted to, you can go up here and click publish all. It will publish the parent record and its component records. And that way you can make sure that all have been published. If you want to view the publish, you can either go to your public side of ArchivesSpace, or you can click view published here. It will give a separate screen, and you will see this digital material record with its link to the digital object. And it will take us to the website for that first one. Okay, so that is pretty much all I have to cover for digital objects currently, but I did want to discuss the question posed yesterday about born digital materials and digital objects. So the question said that you recommended that if you are describing digital materials, you should use digital objects and not use the instances for digital materials. So it says, I know that we are going over digital module tomorrow, but asked, how does this work for born digital materials in a hybrid collection? They're not surrogates of analog materials, and I don't see how you add a digital object to a series. So it wants you to add an archival object and then a digital object, but then you are doubling your data entry. So basically, it may seem like a doubling of data entry, but as I stated before, digital objects can be added at multiple levels of records. So archival object just refers to that type of record, since it's not the top resource record or top digital object or topics. So it just refers to it as an archival object, but it can be series level and you can add a digital object at that level. My recommendation is that you use the archival object as the way of putting where it is in the collection in the find name, like where it represents there, and using digital object as its instance, treating it as its like physical container, but it's really a digital file and linking it to that digital file, because that's the only way to do that in ArchivesSpace and in an archival object. I hope that answers the question. And I'm open to taking more questions at this time.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, to build on what Brittany said, you would, when you create your archival object, you would indicate the instance. So it doesn't necessarily mean when you have an archival object that this is like a physical item. It could be, this is the descriptive metadata for a thing that is represented as a physical item and as a digital object, or just a physical item, or just a digital object. So just like she said, you would indicate it there in the instance exactly what type of material you are describing in the archival object record. By archival object, you mean component. Yeah, like a archival object is in the component records. So your resource record has component records, and your digital object record could potentially have component records. So this item 1 through 4, those are your component records.
Yes.
For your digital object. Christina says, thank you for answering my question from yesterday, Brittany.
You're welcome. Real quick, I forgot to show this, but I wanted to show how you can link this complex object. So I just wanted to show that. I'm going to navigate to my favorite finding aid again, because it's my favorite. And we'll edit that. So I have the series here for maps that has the object that we've been creating in it. So that's its archival object. And then we'll navigate down to instances. Choose add digital object. And from before we chose browse, but here you can, we chose create, but for here you can choose browse, or you can type ahead. I want to show what the browse menu looks like. These are all the digital objects. I have found that if you want to find a specific item through the browse menu, you can either copy and paste its whole title or copy and paste its identifier, because you can search by identifier. So I'm going to show you how that looks, and it will bring you to the object that you have created without other potential objects. That's in the case that you, like us at the AUC, have a lot of things with Atlanta in the title, or other types of digital objects with similar titles. And then you would just save your archival object, and you have linked that complex digital object. And that is everything. So I can answer any more questions people may have.
We do have some questions in the chat. Nancy's answered a few of them, but some of them I'm going to go ahead and read out loud anyway, because I think it might be worth just going over it. Can you explain the various X-Link options that you mentioned?
I can try. We don't use them that much, but
I can also read Nancy's answer.
Yes, that would be helpful.
The X-Link options basically pass along instructions about how the link should behave. For example, does it automatically open when you open the record, or do you want to click on the link and whether or not it opens in a new browser? However, these instructions are only acted upon if the style sheet transforming your XML enforces the instruction. So there are really two steps: selecting the instructions and making sure the style sheet acts upon them.
Yes, and if you use ArchivesSpace public side, it does. So we chose this to open a new tab, and it opens a new tab for that item, rather than opening on the same page or not opening, that kind of thing.
All right. Can you explain a little bit about how the merge function works with digital objects? If you merge one digital object into another, is any information transferred to the merged object?
So we're gonna browse to a digital object, and I can show that. You can do in view or edit mode. So when you go to merge, and merge is available for various records. So it's not just digital objects that you can do this for. But when you search in here, you're going to search all the digital objects. So say there might be another watercolor, and there is, and you want to merge those two. You would search for it by either typing ahead or browsing. You can either create and merge it too, but then you would click merge, and then this screen will appear. So it's saying that you're merging the selected record into the record you're currently in. So the selected record will be deleted, and any linked records that it's linked to will be linked to this digital object. So the name for the digital object will be the current one, and the old one's name won't exist or anything like that. So I can show that what that looks like. You click merge, new screen appears, and all information has been merged into this. So digital objects merge. So all the information that was in that last one has been added to this one. I hope that answers the question first.
Thanks. And then Nancy, you chatted that you could unmute yourself and talk about merging if you feel so led. Is there anything you want to add?
No. I'm glad I answered it.
know, that was nerve-wracking. How does EAD export of complex digital objects look?
I will be going over exports later, so I can show that later or now if you would like. I don't know.
Maybe let's wait if you're going to
Okay.
go over exporting digital objects, and we can talk about it then. Nancy did answer in the chat a little bit that the export of a complex object, I think only the main level digital object comes out in the EAD, not the children. So that is
Yeah. But you have the ability to export different fields here, either mods, mets, or DC, and I can go over those as well.
Are you going to cover them later in the day?
Yes.
Okay, we'll save. How do permissions groups relate to the access of digital objects?
So various permission groups have access to create. Let me see. And view and create them. So it depends on which group you're a part of in your repository. The highest level obviously has access to it. I do not, if you go into view here, you can see for viewer, they can barely do anything. So they won't be able to access it. But it depends, like basic entry may be able to access it, but you can give different permissions level. So they can create an update. So viewers basically are the only ones who can't do much of anything with digital objects, but once you get to higher levels, they should be able to create and update them. They may not be able to delete or suppress them. But it depends on what group you have assigned your users to, which we discussed yesterday.
And you can also create new groups. I mean, it's
yes.
up to you at your repository how you want to enable permissions. Who can?
Yeah, and you can create a group just for people to do digital objects if that's their sole purpose in ArchivesSpace.
Their sole purpose is digital objects.
Yes. I need someone to do that.
I know. Does ArchivesSpace have a way to deal with external links that change?
So you will have to edit them. At the AUC, we have handle links so they stay permanent. There's a way to create permalinks for things in ArchivesSpace. I have not done that. There's also backend batch editing of digital objects, which is a whole another topic. So sometimes it may involve manual editing or you having someone use the backend or creating permalinks for your digital materials to use. And I highly recommend using your permalinks rather than just regular links. I use regular links because this is not our ArchivesSpace instance. But if I scroll down, you see that we have a handle link for this digital material. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, there are a few different ways, and you can use archival resource keys. There are, if you're worried about your links changing, because that really would be a pain to have to go in and manually edit or use the API to make those sorts of edits. There are ways to use links, like she said. So, okay, I think this question goes back to merging. Just the tag record subjects and agents transfer. So when you merge a record into another record, what happens to the subjects and agents?
Oh, so the one I showed, the subjects and agents merged into it. So if we view this is the one I merged into, you scroll to agent links, you'll see that when I first showed there wasn't that many in here. There's two record links for probably one of the same records. There's multiple creators and sources. There's multiple subjects here. And I don't have the way to go back. Once you merge, you have deleted that other record. So I would examine the record that you want to merge to make sure you know what you want merged into it so that it's merged. But it should merge your subjects and agents.
Thanks. Can you expand on what the make representative button means when adding digital objects as instances?
Okay, I didn't discuss that because if I'm understanding correctly, it doesn't work as well as it should. So you click make representative and it has made this file version representative of all the file versions you would add to this object. So if you have multiple, you can make this one the representative one, and that one would go back to make representative, and this one would appear, from my understanding, first and be like the top file for it. But we don't use it, so I don't know why.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yes.
I kind of recall talking to Mark Custer about this, and I think this was functionality that used to exist. So if you had a file version like you wanted to show the thumbnail or the JPEG as opposed to the TIFF, it would pull that up. But I had the impression talking to him that this is actually a little bit of a leftover code and doesn't actually behave that way anymore. And that this make representative is just kind of left behind. But that was a while ago that I talked to him, so I'm not sure that this really functions as intended, which is why it's a little problematic.
Yes.
Could be wrong, but that's, I kind of recall talking to him about that.
I feel like he told me the same thing.
So I think it's functionality that used to exist, but there's a little bit of lingering left behind when it went away.
But in the way that it was created, the way Brittany described it is accurate. So if you have
That's
like
what it was supposed to do.
yeah, they would be representative instead of
Yeah.
like the TIFF, your master file. We'll have to play around with that.
If you decide to add multiple file versions, I personally don't recommend adding your master file to this unless it's for born digital material.
Right, unless you're using ArchivesSpace as your place of record.
Yes.
Let's see. Can ArchivesSpace show one component, say the original, to one user and another component, say the thumbnail, to another user?
That's a good question.
I think if you had your thumbnail and your original both linked to the same record, then the user, there would be no way to designate the user could only see one of the two linked records. They would, the permission level is at the record, or is at for the entire record, not at like the module, or not at like the individual elements of the record.
Yeah, because what they first see is the parent record and what it looks like, and then you have to click on each item to look at them and how they're represented in ArchivesSpace in the public side.
If you were thinking about users as in like people not staff, but people who want access, there are ways to limit what's published.
Yes.
So, I mean, because you definitely don't want, or you probably don't want like your master file out there for people to download because it's huge. You want it more like a service image available to them.
Yes, and you would just you wouldn't choose publish all at the top, and you would leave the check boxes unchecked to make sure they don't publish on the side. You can also suppress those component records if you need to.
All right, there aren't any more questions in the chat, but please feel free to keep typing. We'll pause for a few seconds in case anyone is currently typing a question into the chat. And while we're doing that, I think at this point, we will go ahead and take our break. Oh, we got a question. What's the difference between suppressed and unpublished?
Suppressed, as we discussed yesterday, is where you basically make that whole record itself undiscoverable to people who don't have permissions to it. So it won't appear in the public side. It will only appear to people who have permission to suppress and unsuppress records, and it just makes sure you don't publish confidential or restricted materials. We use at the AUC to have a restricted materials as a part of the finding aid, but not in our published finding aid. So if you unpublish it, you're just making sure it's not on the public side, but suppressing it, make sure people don't see it on staff or public side if they're not supposed to. I hope that explains it.
Gotcha, thanks. Yeah, we will go ahead and take our break, like I said, and we will start again at 1:15. All right, everybody, it's 15 minutes after the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started with authority records, agents and subjects. Brittany?
Hello again, everyone. So we're going to start with authority records. We will be discussing agents and subjects. The workbook does have classifications in it, and you can find classifications on around page 111 of the workbook, and you can refer to it about that. We won't be discussing them today. So to begin, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what authority records are in ArchivesSpace. So basically, ArchivesSpace allows you to create authority records that identify and describe a person, family, or corporate body, the access points known as subject, related to archival material. So who created them, what records did they create, and what are these records about, basically. So there are different ways to do that in ArchivesSpace, and ArchivesSpace just allows you to manage your authority information. So you can create them independently of a record, so they just are in ArchivesSpace, or you can link them to an existing record, or you can import authority records. So I'm going to first start by showing you how to import them. It won't be a long overview of it. Where is this? Right here. So you'll go to the settings button here and go down to plugins. This is a plugin built into ArchivesSpace. So it's the name authority files and the subject files of Library of Congress, as well as OCLC. So I'm gonna first show you how to import a name authority file. So say you have a record created by Jane Doe, and you want to import that name from Library of Congress. You only are required to add the primary name, which is generally the last name, in order to search for that in this plugin. So Jane Doe is most likely not a subject here, so we're gonna say that it's Janet Doe instead, and you'll see that there's a record for Janet Doe, and you can show the record and see the mark XML for that record, see what it refers to, the various fields of the mark XML, and you can also select it. You can select multiple to import at one time. So if you want all of these, you can select them. If you don't want them, you just delete them from this field over here. So it refers that you'll see over here the number for that authority file. You're able to delete it, or if you want to import and you know that's the one you want, you click import. Will tell you that it will redirect you to a background job, which we'll discuss later. It will show you the log for that import. And once it's done, you just refresh the page and it will show the created record. So you can click on that record and see all of the information that it pulled from Library of Congress. So the dates of existence, the names, the linked records if there are any, anything else that was associated with this record. That's how you do Library of Congress name authority files. You can also pull in subject headings. So you can import those. You would select LCSH over here instead of LCNAF. And for primary name is where you put the first term for the subject term. So we're going to look for civil rights, which we can add to primary name. So we're going to search. And you'll see that it's the first record that comes up, but what if you wanted movements? You can select both of those and import both of them. You see that there are two civil rights, so you may want to look at the record to determine which one you want. So we're just going to go with the first one. If you want this one and not the first one, you can select it and delete the first one. So let's import those. So you click import for the two records you selected over here. Once you do that, you'll be redirected to a background job again. So it'll show your import job. We'll start running the search. Now we'll go over what background jobs mean later during import of data. So when you refresh the page, you will be given the two records that have been created or modified. You can click into them and see what's brought in. You'll see that it's brought in the term, it's topical, and there's no linked records, but you have a scope note of what this term means. So that is basically the import feature for the plugin. You will see that there's also OCLC. We won't be doing that. I just wanted to show you name authority files and subject headings. So from there, we're going to move on to agent records and how to create and link them, and what types of records, agent records are used for, like where you can link them, what their purpose is. So we're going to browse to agents over here. So you go to browse agents. You can see agents within a record or not. So we're just going to pull up one of these records and see the view mode of it. You see on the left-hand side that what is associated with this. You can see in the basic information if this the type of record this is, and if it's published, you will see the names and the linked records here, and any other information that's provided. So in ArchivesSpace, agents are established and controlled separately from accessions and resource descriptions, and then you associate them with material descriptions by linking. So they can be associated with either accessions, resources, digital objects, or their component records. So there's 3 relational modes that you can use these for. So they can be the creator, the source of the acquisition, or the subject of the materials. There are 4 types of agent records in ArchivesSpace. Those are person, family, corporate entity, and software. And I just want to note here that agent records link to accession records, resource component records, and digital object component records will not be exported to MARC XML records. The same is true for subject records that are linked to those types of records. So now I'm going to show you the different types of agent records. So if you go to create, and you can create them either in the agent module or through a record itself. But I'm going to first show you what it looks like from the agent module. So if you go down the agent, you will see that you can select the 4 types: person, family, corporate entity, and software. I'm going to first show you what's required for each. Then we're going to create a person and then link it to a record. So person, it usually requires that you add the name order and the primary name. Those are both required for this. And if you deem it necessary, you can add the source. That's usually required based on DAC standards. So if you do not pull a record from Library of Congress, you can select local sources, NACO authority files, union list of artists, LCSH, Library of Congress. So you can select which one you found this name authority for. You also select the rules for describing for it. It can be DAX, RDA, AACR, or your local rules, or you had none that you followed. And we'll get more into the other fields when we start creating a person. So the next record you can create is family. It's very similar to person, but it refers to the family. And what's required for this is the family name, the source, and the sort name, which is automatically generated. You'll see that it has similar fields as a person, but not all the same ones, since it's just family. And we'll go into the below subrecords with the person record. And then the next is a corporate entity. What's required for a corporate entity is the primary part of the name, the source, and the sort name, which is automatically generated. You'll see that it has various name forms. It's not as similar to person, that some fields have changed, and you'll use this for an organization's records that you have, and this is how you create that agent record. And the last you can create is software. So for software, you are required to have the software name, the source, and then sort name that's, as we said, automatically generated. The software name refers to the name of the software and can basically, we don't use software that much, but it can be used, and it is an agent that you can create. It has different fields required, in different fields in the name forms, different from person, corporate entity, and family. So you would fill out different information if your institution requires it, such as version, manufacturer, and dates. Now I want to go through and show you how to create an agent, a person agent. So we are going to create an agent for Josephine Dibble Murphy, who we had a photograph of in my favorite finding aid. So for that person, we will choose to publish. I will say that you need to publish agents separately from the records that they are a part of. Since they are their own records, they can't be published when you select publish all in a resource record or a digital object record. They're a separate record. So for us, when we create agent records, we use Library of Congress authorities. If we don't have those, we would use local sources or RDA. So we're going to search for her within Library of Congress name authorities. And we'll see that, so her middle name is Dibble, and we don't see it. We do see this one for Josephine Murphy, but we're not certain of it. It could be her. It's not, because she's not a sculptor from my understanding of who she is. So we're going to create this based on local sources rather than Library of Congress. So we're going to choose local sources here. If you want to add dates of existence, you can. So existence can be an expression. So we'd say that she lived from 1900 to 1967. That's not her real dates, but we can choose, we're making them up for this purpose. You can choose single or range, so we'll choose a range. You can add a begin or end date. It's not required. The only things required are the label, expression, and type. And then you can add multiple dates, because from here you can select you can add multiple dates if necessary, but it's only going to let you add existence dates. So we'll choose, if you have authority ID, that's an ID that came from the name authority file or the other sources that you could use, and you would add that here. But since we don't have the ID, we're going to just leave that blank and use local sources. You add the rules, which we're going to say that we did this based on DAX. So you can change the name order. Indirect refers to last name, then first name. You can change it to direct or indirect. But those are your two options. If you change it to direct, the primary part of the name would still be the last name. You would still put that there, but how it appears would be first name, last name. So we're going to keep it at indirect. And you choose your name order based on the rules that you are following. So primary name would be Murphy. Rest of name would be her first and middle name if there is a middle name. And if that is how it is in the source that you are using. You can add a suffix such as junior or the fourth. You can add a fuller name. So you can add how it is abbreviated. So it gives you some examples there. You can add the number, such as second, fourth, third. You can add more dates here. And this is also refers to dates of existence, dates of activity, that kind of thing. You can add a qualifier. So you can distinguish between this person and another identical person that you have in your records. So say you might have two Josephine Murphys, but they're not the same one. One is the sculptor, one is the, and maybe in photographer, artist, something else. So you can identify that here. So you can identify their place of work, their dates, various other things can be added there. And then sort name is something that's automatically generated. So you don't have to worry about it, but it's done and you can see from the tool tips what it means. And you can edit it by unchecking automatically generate. So that allows you to type in this field. It's default as checked. And then you can say, add a use name. Know that they had two different names and this one used at a different time. You can add that here. You can add multiple use dates. You can add contact details. Say this is a donor and you want to have their details with their agent records. So you would add their name here, what they're called, their address, their apartment, their city and state, country. So that's if you want this contact information within this, their email, any notes about the contact information, like how they prefer to be contacted, that kind of thing. You can add telephone number to this. So if it's, you can identify if it's business, home, cell, the number, the extension they use. You can add multiple telephones. You can add notes about the agent, so a biographical note or a right statement note. So a biographical about the person, if it's your donor and you would like to have the information here. You can add related agents. You can say that they are associated with this person. They work together. They had a relationship during childhood or when they were older. They're the parent or child to this person. So you can add, and then you would choose if they were child or related, parent of related, and then add that agent here. So you can search, browse, or create. So you're able to create another person through this. So let's see. So we can add Jane Doe to this. We can give a description. This is their daughter or stepchild, that kind of thing. You can change it to associative relationship and you can find it. or you can do earlier sus later and do the same thing. So it allows you to add related agents. And then you can add external documents. So we're going to say that this is all the information we want. We have it published. We're going to save it. You can add either save or save +1 and add another one, or begin to create another one. So you can see that all this information has been saved. You can view the published side of it. But you know that these appear on the public side under names column of the public interface. So that tab is where all published agent records would live. So we've created an agent record for Josephine Dibble Murphy. So we're going to go into a resource record. Now I'm going to show you how to link the agent record. The standard way to add agents is usually at the collection level of a resource record. You can add them at other levels with her photograph here, but those will not export with EAD or your XML. So we will go to agent links here on the left. You can see that you can add an agent from here. When you add an agent, you will need to select a role for that agent, and you select between the three that usually we use agents for: creator, source, or subject. So we're going to choose creator. We're going to say she created this. You can give a title for this person, which is optional. You can give the relator. And then you're only required to do role and agents. So here you can type ahead, browse, or create. So from here, you can create this person record, and it just shows you a similar fields as in from the agent module. So you would enter all the information necessary and then click create and link to agent. And you can browse, and you can search through this text for that person that you've created and want to add to this record, and click link to agents. And there's also the ability to type ahead. Type ahead, the record will appear, and then you'll save your resource. And once you save, you will see that we now have one agent link, and that link is a creator. You can add multiple agent links, and you can change their roles. There can be multiple creators, sources, subjects. So you have the ability to add more if necessary. And if you need to update this agent link for any reason, you can click on it through this finding aid and click view. You can also go back to browse and then agent and find it in the browse, but you'll be able to view it and then edit it from here. You also have the ability to add event, download the encoded archival context record, view published, and merge. We're going to go over the exporting of the record later on. And if you know that you want to merge it into another one, you would just search for one that may have the same name. You see that there's no matches. But what if Jane Doe is really Josephine Dibble Murphy and you want to add that here? You can merge that into here. And when you do that, it's similar to digital objects. Josephine Dibble Murphy will become the record that you see always, with those records linked to Jane Doe being a part of this agent record. You can compare agents to see what is you want. So you'll see that Jane Doe will be deleted and it doesn't have much information about it, just that it's a person with the names. If you want to replace these sources or rules, you can click here and it will replace that with the one that will be deleted. So if you want her name to be Jane Doe, you can replace that. But those are only the things within the name forms appear to be able to be replaced. So we'll replace Dax with local rules, and we'll keep her name as Josephine Dibble Murphy. And you can either see a merge preview, so make sure you're getting what you want out of these records, you're merging the right things. You can see that the rules changed the local rules, but you kept everything else from Josephine Dibble Murphy, and nothing else from Jane Doe will merge. Then you can click continue, and that will bring you back to the screen. So you can either click merge on the bottom or merge on the top. You can also cancel if you decide that you don't want to merge these records anymore. So we're going to click merge. And the records have merged, and you'll see the new agent record for Josephine Dibble Murphy. You'll see the linked records, and you'll see that in names, the rules have changed to local rules. Okay, so before I move on to subjects, I wanted to know if there's any questions about agents.
We don't currently have any questions about agents in the chat, but we can pause for a few seconds to see if any come through. Okay, we're not getting anything in the chat, so let's go ahead and move on to subjects.
Awesome. So,
oh, wait, I'm sorry. right at the nick of time. David says, and he says, sorry, David, can the content of agents or subjects be imported from original sources?
From original sources, I think you would have to build your own plugin for that. The only plugin with ArchivesSpace is this one, the name authority files. So currently ArchivesSpace doesn't have that ability, except for through the import jobs, which I'll discuss, which I don't think there's an, let me see. So you can import mark XML for subjects and agents. So that is a possibility. So if you were to build those files, you can import your subject and agent.
And that's a good way if you know that you need to import a lot of subjects and agents to sort of do that in mass, and then you have a library of subjects and agents that you can pull from in ArchivesSpace to link to your records already there, ready for you.
And they will migrate over if you migrate from a different application, such as Archivist Toolkit, and I will tell you how to clean those up later.
Ooh, great teaser. All right. We didn't get any other questions.
Okay, and I hope that helps you, David. So let's now discuss subject records, are your access points that help people basically find your collection, find collections via the public side. And I want to first show you what that looks like in the public interface. So if you're in the public interface, you'll see at the top these tabs. You'll see that names refer to agent links, but if you click subjects, these are all the subjects that you have published from your ArchivesSpace instance. And if people click on them, they can see all records linked to with that subject term. So these are the linked records. So we're gonna work on building these subjects and linking it to my favorite finding aid. So we'll go back to the staff side. So in the staff side, subjects can be created via the finding aid you're in, or separately via the create drop down. You can browse them through the browse drop down so you can see all subjects within the collection. I'm going to open one of them for you to see what it looks like. So within ArchivesSpace, there are 10 types of subjects that you can create. There's cultural content, the context, function, genre, form, geographic, occupation, a style/period, a technique, temporal, topical, and then a uniform title. There's a lot of different types you can choose from. I know that a lot of people usually just create genre form, topical, geographical, and function. But you can create all of those if you have those types of subjects within your collections. So here you'll see the view mode of a subject. You'll see the basic information such as the source, the terms and subdivisions for this that create this up here. You'll see the linked records. You'll see that it's linked to 2 records. You can link subjects for resource records, digital object records, accession records. I'm remembering that correctly. And component records. So this is linked to a resource and an archival object. However, if you link it to a component record, such as an archival object and a digital object, a component record, those will not appear in your export. Only the ones linked at the resource level or the parent level of the digital object will appear. So this is generally all the information that will appear for a subject. So now I'm first going to show you how to create a subject outside of a record, and then we're going to link to a record. Okay, so this is the screen that appears when you create a new subject. You can see that the only required fields are source, and then the terms and subdivision, as well as the type, which is that drop down of the usually 10 types. So we're going to create the subject. We're going to create a subject for African American women for our new favorite finding aid, as well as one for maps that we have in my new favorite finding aid. So for source, you can go back to this and find it in the search, or you can use local sources. You can use art and architecture source, medical subject Getty, basically any ones that appear here, and you can add different sources if you use them. We're going to choose Library of Congress subject headings. You can add a note about this term, similar to how civil rights has a scope note that explains the term. That's not required. You can also add its authority ID if it comes from one of those sources that provide the IDs, such as LCSH. We're going to create the term African American women, which is just one term. There's no subdivisions. And it is topical. So we have added that, we've created that, and so we want to save it. And then we'll do +1. So doing the +1 brings up a new record so we can create more subjects. We will choose the source of Library of Congress subject headings. We're going to create one for historical geography maps, which has a subdivision. So this one, the historical geography. It's topical. And then we're going to add a term / subdivision. So that term will be maps. And that can be one of these, genre form, function. We're just going to choose topical for now. But you choose based on the sources that you use. You can add multiple subterms, all that you need. If there are 4, you can add 4. I find that it's easy to keep this pretty straightforward and simple. You can add external documents if you need to. So you would add what this is and the location, such as where it came from. If you had these located on a file server and they're from local sources, you can add the resolvable URI to the location. So, but it's not required for subjects. So we're going to click save. And these are the 2 subjects we've created. You can see that it's created term and its subdivision, historical geography maps, and we have saved all this information. So if you choose that you don't want this, you can delete it, or you can merge it into another one. similar to how you merge others. So let's see if there's maps. Say we want to merge into that one. This will not give you a preview screen where you can choose what will be replaced. You just merge them. So the abolitionists would merge into historical geography maps, and all records associated with abolitionists would be relinked to this subject. So that subject will now appear in those records that it's linked to. So we're going to cancel this because they are not the same subject. I just wanted to show you what that looks like. So now we're going to navigate to my favorite finding aid. And we're going to link these subjects. I'm going to edit the finding aid. So you can add subjects at different levels, as I have said. So component records and the resource record. So we're going to first add the subjects to the resource record, but then we're going to add subjects to one of the archival objects. So when adding subjects, linking them, you can type ahead here and choose subjects. You can keep typing here if you want to. They will keep appearing and you can keep selecting them. Or you can browse. So you can browse for the subjects here. You can click multiple and link multiple at one time. You'll see them appear here, or you can create from here as well. And that will give you the same fields as from the subject module. So you'll add a source, term, and type, and you'll have the ability to add an external document. So we're going to search for the African American women that we created. So you can see that. And then once you've done that, you click Save Resource. And if you go to subject, you'll see that we now have 6 subjects. And you'll have to click to load. Once you get past a certain number, it doesn't appear on its own. You have to load them. Then you'll see each subject that we've added. You have the ability to delete them if necessary. You have the ability to edit them by viewing and going into the view mode, seeing what they're already linked to, saying you don't want this anymore, delete, merge, edit, that kind of thing. So now let's add a subject to an archival object. So we know that this is a map. We'll say it's historical geography map. We want to add a subject to it. This is similar to, it's the same as adding it to the resource component. You can type here, browse, or create. So we're going to start typing here. You can see that. You can add multiple as well, but as said before, these won't export, but you can see that you now have one subject for this. It's best to add all subjects in the entire collection to the collection level, and then just, if you want to add them to archival objects, add the ones relevant to them as you go through. Okay. And that is everything with subjects. So I will take questions on agents and subjects if anyone has them at this time.
There are some questions. Before we get into the questions, could you go over how to, or clarify how to link an agent to a record and designate their role, and specifically their role as subject?
Yeah. So you would go back to your resource record or whatever record you plan to add that agent to. You would add an agent link either here or with the plus button. For role, if you want to add it as its subject, choose subject. You can then search for that person and add them. You can add multiple. You can add their term and subdivision if you deem it necessary, but it's not required. And then you would save the resource. And then when you go back to agent links, you will see that you have 2 now, but one is creator and one is subject. And that's how you designate which role they have, and you have 3 to choose from: creator, source or subject. I hope that answers.
Yeah, and just to clarify, if an agent is the subject of a resource or of a collection, you don't create a subject record for them. You create an agent record and you designate the role of subject.
Yes. Yeah. These won't appear in the subject browse list, but they will act as agents. That way you can add them as various types rather than just subject.
Awesome. There's some other questions, but since we're kind of on the subject, can you talk about what the records would look like on the public user interface?
Oh, for names? Yeah. I don't know why I didn't show that earlier, but I can show you. So under names tab is where all your agent records would show up. You can see from the results list what type of record they are. So the name, the person, if they have dates of existence, if they're a corporate entity, they appear as an organization. So, and if you click into one of these, you will see the record it's associated with. So you can find it in this collection. If we go back, we might be able to find one that has more information, such as this one with dates of existence. So it will give all the information provided for it and what record it's found in. And that's how it looks on the public side. It does not give all the information entered in those fields. I'm not certain if it gives contact details, but we can actually search for Murphy and see. That's weird.
Yeah.
The one I create will not appear.
But not being slow with the reindex. Yeah. Specifically things related to like contact information, especially if your agent, your person is living and you want to record maybe what their mailing address is or their phone number, and those are definitely not things you want viewable in the public interface. You can put those in fields where they do not display. So if you're thinking about using this as part of how maybe you manage your living donors or if anyone that you are including information that you don't want made available, you can still include that and it can be suppressed in different fields.
Yeah.
Did you show what it looks like from, or what an agent record looks like from within a collection? Sorry, I can't remember.
Yeah, and I can go back to that one. So we'll go back to my favorite finding aid. If you do it from view mode and scroll to agent link, this is what appears.
Oh, I mean in the PUI. Sorry.
Oh, PUI. Okay. From a record, yeah, I can do that. So we'll see if my favorite finding aid is in here. Well, it's not because it's not published. But we'll just click on the collection these are associated with. So this has the creator, and that appears above the additional information, but it also appears in related names. So that's how it looks within these this digital record. So if we go to a different one, we just go to collection. You'll see creator, as well as if you expand, you'll see any additional names that were linked to this collection that weren't creator. So if it's a subject, it would appear under here. So yeah, that's how it looks on the public side.
Yeah, and that first person, so that creator that appears before you expand everything, that would be the first subject or the first agent that you link. So if you want to maybe designate who the primary person is associated with the collection, just make sure they're the first agent that you link.
Yes.
Anna asked, why would you create a Library of Congress subject heading authority record rather than import it using the plugin? Nancy did answer in the chat, so I could just read that aloud, or Brittany, if you wanted to answer that one yourself.
Oh, well, from our institution, we actually use FAST, LC fast subject headings, so they're not the same as the subject headings you would import. So that's why we create them. It's also to get experience creating subjects and to make sure you enter the right information, because the information from LCH may not import as well, but it should. But there's always human error, technical errors.
Yeah, there's always human error for sure. And Nancy adds that if you need subdivisions, then you really should create it. You can't import or append subdivisions from Library of Congress. So
Yes.
only import the primary term. You can only import the primary term and the authority ID.
I will say that, and I can show this, there are some that have their terms and subdivisions, because I used this yesterday. I think, yeah, so that's the one that I created. I could have selected it and linked it, so that's the term with its subdivision. But I wanted to show you guys how to create it. So, yeah. Some, not all will appear, and you have to scroll through this list to find your exact match and be able to read this file. So.
Right, thanks. We don't have any other questions in the chat right now, and we are right on schedule. So I think we're ready to move on into imports and exports.
Okay, the fun stuff. So we'll begin by talking about exporting records and what that looks like, and then talk about importing them as well. So there's different records that can be exported. You can export your agent records, your resource records, and your digital object records. And then there's other ways to export other records, but that's advanced and can be discussed at a later time. So you can export for agent records your encoded archival context, so your corporate bodies, persons, and families XML. For resource records, you can export EAD XML and your MARC XML. And then for digital objects, you can export mods, METs, and Dublin Core. So first I'll show you how to export an agent record. So we'll go to Browse and Agents. We'll choose this first one. We'll go in Edit mode. And see up here, you see download your EAC CPF. So you'll click on that and it will download the XML, which if you open, it'll just show you, and mine being ridiculous, but you can have it open in Oxygen or other systems that you use. Mine's just opening in Explorer, but it will show you all the fields that it exported, such as the repository, the name, where it was linked, that information. You can also export it from background jobs. Or can you? Actually, no. Don't know what I'm saying. So there's a way to, so you would go to each record and download the different records that can be exported from it. So we'll go to a resource record and we'll download that EAD. So I want to do my favorite finding game. Today I can't spell, but we'll go into view or edit. You can export either way. And from here, you'll go to export and you'll see that you're able to export various records with a resource record. You can do EAD, MARC XML, container label, but we're going to focus on EAD, MARC XML, and PDF. So you can export the PDF of this, and you can also include the unpublished stuff, or you don't have to. So first we'll export the EAD. You can choose to include unpublished, the DAO tags, the numbered tags, and also have it in EAD3 schema. So what I just clicked on includes unpublished and DAO tags, but we can also change it to these 4, and then you just go back to it and click on it. And we'll download it, and you'll be able to open it in the application of your choice or Explorer, as mine has, and it should have all information, even the unpublished aspects of the record. Okay, so you can also download or export the MARC XML either with or without the unpublished records. We're going to do unpublished. You can open it. You can see that it looks different from the EAD, and that includes all information from the record. And then if you want to create a PDF, you can. That will take you to a background job. So the background job will show you status, which is running, when you submitted it, the time it started doing the job, the basic information about this record, such as what repository and who created it, what you're printing, and if you're printing the unpublished. It will give you a log of what's going on. If it's unpublished, it will give you a warning of that. It will tell you when it's done, and when you refresh the page, you'll get download PDF. So if you click on that, it will give you a PDF that you can open without whatever you want, and then you can open that PDF. It gives you name with these the identifier numbers when you printed the PDF, the repository information, table of contents, and then summary information, administrative, your access points, your subject headings, and then the collection inventory is defined with its series, subseries, folders, notes. If any other notes for the collection were here, it would appear before the collection inventory for the biographical scope and contents. So those are what you can download for a resource. Now I'm going to discuss digital object records that you can download and export out. So for digital objects, you would go to the digital object itself. You can either view or edit it. So you'll browse and then digital objects. And then you'll see, along with all the other buttons, there's an export button. And you can download mods, METs, or Dublin Core. For mods, you just click on it and it will download it for you. So these will be in that type of record with different fields from the others. And you can see that it's downloaded everything. Even if it's unpublished, it will export all that information. You can see things such as the name, the role, you can see any notes associated with it, the title of it, what's being used to create this. You can also export METs. And for METs, you can either choose to use mods or Dublin Core for that. So because it works as an XML file comprising the digital objects metadata, and additionally any component level metadata, as well as references to any associated content files in the file version section of the record. So mods and METs will do both component levels, but METs will get your content files. And then you can choose, with that export, you choose its descriptive data to either look like a mods record or Dublin Core. So we chose mods, and this is how that record looks. You can see everything associated with it, as well as its content file and the link to it, which looks like you can click on it. And then if you choose to download it as use Dublin Core for your descriptive data, it will appear differently. There's slight differences based on Dublin Core standards and elements, but it will include, because it's a METS record, the content file. And then lastly, you can just export the Dublin Core, and that will comprise the digital objects metadata. But for complex objects, it will only show the parent level metadata. It will not show component records. So you can see that it doesn't include the content file. It only includes the metadata within the records, only the descriptive information in Dublin core elements. So those are all that you can export from a digital object. There is a way to customize reports. You can customize your style sheets for EAD, and you can generate PDFs from background jobs. So if you go to background jobs here, you can see all the background jobs you have done. You can also create a job from here, which allows you to generate the PDF where you will select a resource you want to print. That allows you to do it outside of the resource record itself. You can add plugins, which we won't discuss here, but there are plugins listed in your workbook, and they starting on page 118, it discusses customizing exports, and those can be used. And you can use those plugins to get more out of your exports, but we won't be discussing them. And then you can also work with the API to do bulk exporting and importing if necessary. And there are reports. I will show you briefly where they are. So you go to create, background job, and then create report. And here is listed all the reports you can create on the side and over here, and you can select those to create reports based on various information within your ArchivesSpace instance. These don't necessarily export everything associated with a record. There are customizable ones you can do, but these are the ones that come with an ArchivesSpace instance. And reports is a job in itself to discuss, but it is there if you decide to use it. Okay, so now we'll discuss, well, before I go to importing, are there any questions about exporting?
Currently none in the chat, no.
Okay, so I'll move on to importing, and then we'll take questions for both importing, exporting after that. So with importing of records, there are various file types you can import, and you would basically create an import job from background jobs, either from the create or by going to background jobs from your settings. So we're going to go from create, background job. I don't know. There is an import data, but it's not showing it here. There we go. Okay, so from background jobs, you can import various files. You can import mark XML for accession, mark XML for a resource, mark XML from subject and agents, your location CSV, an EID, encoded archival context file, a digital object CSV, even one for assessments, and a CSV for accessions. So importing mark XML is basically importing that data. I will be importing several different jobs today. So we will import an EID file, a digital object CSV, an encoded archival context record, and an accession CSV. I'll show you how to do those, but just know that you can do these others as well. So let's first start with the accession CSV. So you would select that from your drop-down menu, then you would choose Add File. And it brings us to the folder I just showed you. And you would select what you want to import from this folder. And you see it here. If you don't want to import that one, you've changed your mind, there is a delete trash can button here that you can do. If not, you just click Start Job. And it will queue the job similar to how we did PDFs. It will show all this information and as well as give you a file about it. It'll give you information about starting it, and then Once it's done, you click refresh page, and you'll see below, different from how we exported PDF, but that below is a new record. So you'll click on this record and you can see the new accession record that we have created. All the information that was imported from the CSV. So it says extent and title, identifier, the date. So you can choose to edit this and add more information or leave it as is. For some reason, it mapped this content description to container summary, which is weird, but you can always move that. Everything is not perfect, but you can always move it if you catch the error and save your accession. Just make sure when you're creating the import records that they have the correct fields and will map to the right ones in ArchivesSpace. So we'll go back to background jobs. We're gonna go in the settings this time. I'm going to go back to create job and import data. And this time we're going to do our digital object CSV. So you select that from the drop down, select add file, and you see that I have two here. This is a CSV and this is an Excel worksheet. So make sure you choose the right file. We're going to go with CSV. See up here below, you can add multiple files if you want, or you can just leave it at one. We'll run the background job. You can see the log. Once we refresh page, it will also show all the records that have been created or modified. You can see that multiple digital objects as well as agent records were created and subjects. So we'll click on one of these to go into it to look at what it is. So you see that it imported basic information such as title and identifier. It's published. It gave the core level, the digital object type, as well as a file version. And we can see that thumbnail here for that file. And that is importing a digital object. And when you browse through your digital objects, you will see these newly imported ones. We're going to go back to background jobs. And now we're going to import data and we're going to do an encoded archival context file. We're going to add that from our list. That is an XML file that we will be importing. So you open it and then you start job. If you have multiple, you would do multiple. It would do the import, the log, similar to all the other ones we've been doing. If you get an error, it will tell you that the job failed over here, and it will give you a reason in this log box. The reason may not make sense, and you may need to copy and paste it from here. You can copy this information and paste it in a document. But it will tell you why it failed, so you can review your file. And you'll see that from that EAC file, we created an agent record for Muriel. And you'll see that it's not published, but we have her name, we have a sort name, we have the sources and rules. We also have a biographical and historical note for her. But she wasn't linked to any records or anything else. But we have all this information that was imported. So lastly, I'm going to show you how to import an EAD XML file. I'm going to go back to importing data screen. We're going to click EAD. We're going to add the file. We're going to choose this EAD import here. I'm going to open it and start job. So you can see that importing jobs allows you to import resources that you may have created through EAD, digital objects that you have CSV files similar to my spreadsheets created. We'll see that this job failed. Was not expecting that, but good to know. EAD ID must be unique. So this job has failed. If we want to fix that, I can just go into this import, find the EAD ID. change this. It's not letting me edit it. Okay, so if you wanted, you would just edit this and change the EAD. Let me see if I can open it. It won't save it as a XML file from there. I do have Oxygen, I just don't have that for some reason as an option currently, but just know that it will import EAD files and explain to you when your job has failed and why. And then you can resolve those issues. So you can refresh the page and get that information and then be able to fix it and import your EAD. And with that, I have completed imports, and then I'll take any questions you guys may have about exporting and importing of data.
Awesome. Yeah, we do have a few questions. And one of the questions, well, one question that was asked several times was, can you show the Excel template or the templates that you were using for imports? And I will say that I also added into the chat the migration tools and data maps and those templates that we make available at ArchivesSpace. So be sure to check that resource out in the chat. But if you could just show what those look like, Brittany.
Yeah, I'll show the digital object one. I got these from our workshop. So from a different workshop. So there are links in the workbook that will take you to a drive with these spreadsheets. So this is the one, the CSV for digital objects. You can see that these are the mapped fields that they will correspond with, and you just fill these in as what you deem necessary for them. So it will do an agent record. It will allow you to add dates. It's a very long document, but it allows you to basically fill in all those fields associated with digital objects without having to do each one individually. You can do everyone in this one if necessary. I hope that one helps. And then the accession import looks like this. It's similar to that one with the mapped fields for the CSV that correspond with those fields in ArchivesSpace. About as long, it just has basically all the records associated with an accession record, such as the disposition. And you're just able to add all this information in there, expand the fields, and they correspond with the fields within ArchivesSpace.
Thank you. Yeah. And you can expand the fields and hide things, but just be careful about deleting fields or your data will not map the way that you want it to.
Exactly.
What is the functional limit of a digital objects import CSV? Do we need to break it up in 1,000 record chunks, or can we import 100,000 in a single CSV? Wow, somebody is.
I have never done that. I will say that the more information in there, the more time it will take to import, and the more likely your job could fail. And it may be because there's one single error in there or multiple errors. So more like 100 to 1,000 would, in my opinion, be better. So you have less human error within that spreadsheet.
Yeah, I would agree with Brittany. Just in my own experience, you could try to import 1,000 things and one has an error and your entire job will fail. Yeah. So that's very painful. Another point is, and I don't know if you saw, but you are able to run multiple jobs. So you could import several different files at one time. Keep in mind, if you elect to do that, if one of those files fails, then all of the jobs will fail. So yes, breaking things up into chunks makes your life easier.
Yeah. It's just, it makes sense based on how human error is.
Yeah, exactly. If you know your data is perfect, I would like to meet you, first of all. And second of all, then you can go ahead and do it. Can you import complex digital objects from CSV?
I do know the Harvard import tool, I believe, allows you to do that. None of those we created were complex. I think, yeah, I am not certain. I have not used the CSV personally at our institution, and I've never seen the CSV import the complex, and I think that's the only way. And the CSV is the only way you can import digital objects this way. I don't know if Nancy has an answer for that.
Yeah,
Or
I
you,
don't-
Jessica.
Nancy or Christine, if either of you could answer that.
Sorry, I was typing in, something into the chat. So what was the question?
Oh gosh, and now I've already lost it.
Can you import component records for digital objects?
Oh, I suspect you probably could using the Harvard template,
Right.
Yes.
but I don't know about through the standard template that we just have on.
Yeah. I think you would.
Org. I so rarely work with digital object components. And I'll teach it a little bit, but just bare bones, because we typically don't use them because we can't link to them. So that I would be wary of thinking we could do that.
I think it probably takes looking through the CSV to see what fields are available in it. The Harvard import tool allows you to choose the level of that item. So it's the parent record, and these are the component record kind of thing through a numbering system. So look into the Harvard import tool.
Thanks. There's a lot of questions. All right. Are all the background jobs saved so that we can go back and check the logs?
So if you go to the repository settings button and background jobs, you should be able to see all your archived jobs. So the ones that aren't active. Active jobs appear up here, and then you're able to see what has been completed, what has failed. You're able to scroll through and you see that there's multiple pages. So if we go to this last one, we can see that it's from 2016. So it will keep an archive of your background jobs. I'm not certain for how long, but it seems like it will keep them. And you're able to view them by clicking view, seeing all the information that was given and the file for that. And you can download the file associated, which is a PDF. And you can see the records that were created through that job, as well as what type of job it was, which was import. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And then Peter asked a question that you may not know the answer to. Does the import job shown in the user interface use the same operations as the API?
I'm not certain because I don't use the API. I would assume maybe.
Yeah, if anyone in the training is using the API or has familiarity with the API and wants to comment that in the chat, please feel free.
Yeah, API is a separate training.
Yeah.
This is Christine, and the API does use different endpoints, and there's different kinds of things that you can combine that aren't exactly what happens in the staff interface. So I would say your options with the API are much greater than what you're definitely not limited to what's in the staff interface.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, and that is all of the questions. I'm talking really slowly in case anyone is typing, but it doesn't look like they are. And we are doing perfect for time. So if you're ready, Brittany, we can go ahead and move on to data cleanup.
Yeah, I'm ready. So data cleanup, which a lot of you may be doing. I'm going to show you what you can do with ArchivesSpace in terms of data cleanup. As if you migrate from Archivist Toolkit and various records come and aren't correct. So we're going to start by discussing cleaning up a controlled values list. Management of controlled values list only appears with certain permissions, usually admin level, maybe your repository manager, but you'll just have to check your user groups to see which ones have this ability. If you have it, it will appear under the system menu. So when you click manage controlled values list, the screen will appear and it will have a box to select list names. And you're able to choose from all the controlled values lists that can be configured within ArchivesSpace and change them through here. So I'm going to show you a specific one to change. We're going to go to our container type list, and this is all the container types you have in your list. You'll see a list of all of them here. You'll see the number of related records, their position in the list. So box appears first, folder appears second. Zero position usually means it's probably a default, but you can set it as default if you desire. You can suppress it, merge it, delete it. So I'm going to show you how to merge these records. So you see folder, but you scroll down to more and there's another folder. This folder has 557 related items, but this one only has 226. And you can see that the value may be folder with a lowercase, but it appears folder capitalized, but you want to just have all folders together. You don't want two listed. You want people choosing the same one all the time. So you're going to choose merge over here. You're going to choose which one it merge into. So if you want folder capitalized as a value to be the standard one, the one that you use always, you would start with the top one and merge it into the other folder. So then you can also choose to merge into something that isn't folder. You can choose any on this list, but just know that when you choose it, all related items will be merged into the one you choose, and they will be relinked to those records, to that container type. So you'll either cancel or select merge value. And you'll see that the value has been merged. And it has gone to 10 on the list rather than being up here at number 1. You can move it up if you desire. You can still see that there's only 557 related items. That's because it hasn't updated that. It doesn't mean that it only has 557. It just means it hasn't updated. If we want to move it, we can. You can move the position up. If you want to set as default, you can do that here too. So that's how you merge container types. That's one way to clean up data. You can choose various controlled values lists to edit them. Say you want to change your digital object type. You can create a value for this. You can merge your various types here. You see that you have 2 still images. So we want to merge those. Merge that into this. Choose merge value and it will work the same way as the other. Those records will be relinked to this container type. And you'll only see this one still image on here rather than seeing both. And now you've cleaned up the various types that could have migrated from your migration, from when you switched over to ArchivesSpace from Archivist Toolkit or another system, when you imported EAD or your CSV file, things that were created because of those imports. You can also merge subjects, as I've shown before. If you go to browse subjects, I'm just going to go over this again. So if you go to browse subject and we want to merge Oh, this is subject. So you can browse subject and you can merge these. So I know that there are multiple photographs listed in the subject list, and I want them to be merged. So I will go into one of them, choose merge, type the other photographs here as we've talked about, and choose the one we want it to merge into. And then you would click merge, and it will give you that screen telling you what will happen when you merge. So this is another way to clean up your data, making sure you don't have multiple of the same subject terms being linked to various resources, and you just keep the same one. If they are from a different source/rule system, then you will want to verify that you actually want to merge these. With agent links, as I've shown before, you can choose what rules and the name forms and replace them if you so desire before merging. Okay, and now with version 2.7.1, there's a way for you to merge container profiles. So container profiles can be found either through your controlled value from your systems for manage container profiles. You can choose it there, or you can choose it from browse and then go down to container profile. If either one will bring you to this screen in which you can select the container profile you want to download, delete, merge. You can either create new ones from here. So we notice here that there's legal document box with weird spelling and then legal manuscript box. We see that they're the same size and they're measured the same way, their extent. So we want to merge these two. You would select them, they'd be highlighted in green, and you come up here to merge. When that happens, you get a new screen that tells you the records that you are merging. It will allow you to select the one you want the other container profile to be merged into, and then you will be able to, so you're able to choose which one is now the standard profile rather than the other one. So we're going to choose legal manuscript box. It's going to show you a number of records you're merging because you can merge multiple at one time. So when you click merge the two records, you'll get this new screen that shows you that you've successfully merged them. It will give you the basic information that is available for this container profile. And if you had any records linked to that container profile, it will now be linked to this container profile. So all those top containers will now be linked to legal manuscript box rather than legal document box. So that's another way to clean up data that you may have come across after a migration or during entry by interns or students, something like that. So all things that were created for other reasons. So with that, we've basically done all the data cleanup that's possible. So you can do data cleanup through controlled values list, through agents and subjects. After importing them, you can clean those up and you can do your container profiles. And then there's ways to merge other records within ArchivesSpace that allow for data cleanup. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. If you have questions about other things that we discussed during this training, feel free to ask those now. Data cleanups are pretty straightforward, or pretty small section of this training.
Thanks. So there are a couple questions in the chat. I'm laughing at Jones. Jones says, I have a question about the public interface. What is the point of the, and then that just makes me laugh. Okay, so what is the point of the container inventory? I find it really confusing and unhelpful.
So if you go to the public interface and we go to collection and we look at that container inventory, I do know that for us, we require people to give our box number in order to, so collection name and box number. So this way they can just browse via box to see what's in that box rather than looking through the whole collection. and they can see the items linked to it. I don't know how many people use this, but they are able to browse through the box and select the folder that that item may be in. So multiple things in one folder, they can see that. So I don't know how many people who use our finding aids use it, but it's there if they want to.
Yeah, and if anyone else is using the container inventory, if they want to drop their use case into the chat, but there are institutions that do like to use it. That doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah,
Get people to it.
We're not using it yet. We're about to move to the public interface, I think, hopefully over the summer. But I think we have some finding aids that are intellectually arranged as opposed to in physical box number order. And so we could see some utility in being able to, if a box is scattered again across 100 pages within a finding aid, to pull up that box and see everything that's actually physically in that. I think that would be the use case for that. But again, we're not actively using it in-house yet.
Yeah, we use the public interface, but we train people on how to use collection organization and collection overview and mention container inventory.
Thanks. Nancy did answer this in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. I am wondering whether the control value list will merge across the board and multi-repositories in an institutional archive space. It looks like only my repositories items are listed within the list with buttons on the right. Please let me know if this is unclear. So Nancy does answer, they do merge across the application for all repositories, so be careful. You can only see the usage in the repository that is currently active. That doesn't mean that the term isn't being used in another repository.
Exactly, so you want to make sure with that. Also, when you're merging agents and subjects, I believe those are across repositories, so you want to make sure people aren't using those as well in other repositories.
Right. Nancy also makes the point, she says, at home, all the repository managers sit down together to occasionally tidy this stuff up. I think that's a really good point, that if you're going to have multiple repositories and an implementation of ArchivesSpace, it definitely helps to have a group of stakeholders who meet regularly or semi-regularly to make decisions that impact the instance-wide, not just your individual repository.
Yes, we have one repository, so we don't run into this issue, but it can become an issue if you have multiple.
All right, we don't have any other questions in the chat, but we'll definitely sit here for a few minutes in case anything pops up. Thank you everyone for making it all the way to the end. I am very pleasantly surprised by the number of people still hanging on. So if you have any questions that relate to not just today, but yesterday as well, please feel free to type them into the chat now. Otherwise, you will receive a follow-up email with a post-workshop survey that I do ask that you fill out. So we will hopefully be doing something like this again, and we want to definitely make sure we improve, or if there are any areas where it was just really awesome and you want to make sure we highlight that again, please let us know. But otherwise, I will stick around. I think Brittany and Nancy probably will stick around for a couple minutes. Someone said thank you. I think this worked well as a webinar. I'm glad you say that. But otherwise, feel free to go ahead and leave the meeting if you'd like.